Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Kimberly Cloud Show. I'm your host, Kimberly Cloud. I have a very, very special guest here for the show today. Can you go ahead and announce to the world who you are and where you're calling from?
Hi, my name is Lolita Milena, and I am based in the lovely city of Los Angeles.
Great. Can you please, the extended version, I want to hear everything you have to say so I can ask you questions. Can you tell me about your past leading up into your present?
Sure. So I was born in Siberia, Russia, alongside the Umar River. I was there for 2 years of the beginning of my life before a foster family from the United States had brought me and another child over to the United States with the intention to adopt. We spent 9 months with the family, and the reason I was pulled from the home was because when I was 2 years old, the foster father, in an act of rage / child abuse, left me permanently paralyzed at 2 years old. I was then immediately placed with my current family. They specialized in helping special needs and traumatized children placements. So I went on to gain 8 sisters and a brother, 7 of us being adopted, with all of us having vastly different stories and disabilities. So they helped not just me, but all of us gain access to exceeding education. They also helped us find things and hobbies that we enjoyed, mine being dance and acting. So I started dancing at 5 years old with professional ballet. I went on to learn then community theater as well as classical dance styles. So growing up then as an adult, I decided to move to the city of Los Angeles to try and pursue that in a more serious context.
Okay. And what happened to the parents? I'm gonna start from what you started from. What happened to the parents who got caught committing this horrendous child abuse to you?
So the foster father spent the maximum sentence in 2002 that could be allocated to him, which was 16 years. He is now a free man. He served his time. And his wife was sentenced to 3 years for tampering and trying to destroy evidence. But she got out, I want to say after a year and a half. I'm not entirely sure of those details. And I have not entirely heard from them. I only heard from the foster father once, and that was when he was up for parole. It was the last 30 days of his sentence, and he essentially had written me a letter, and the courts left it up to me to decide because I was an adult by that time. And I basically had told him in the kindest words that I could that since he had sentenced me to a life sentence, I think it's only suitable to serve final 30.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I agree. Um, I really feel bad. One last question about that, and I'm gonna close the chapter on that. Was he ever sentenced in Russia for that, or was it Siberia?
This was only in the United States, though.
Oh, makes sense.
Though years later, due to my story and a couple of other children's stories throughout the United States, Russia had used our stories as a reason to close foreign adoptions for a prolonged period of time.
Wow. And you dance, you do ballet. Tell me, how does that make you feel when you do ballet? How long have you been doing it for? I want to learn more.
I got started with loving ballet when I was around 3 to 4 years old. This is all according to my father's journals that he kept on me. Because my memory tends to be a little fuzzy given how long ago it was. But I got involved officially when I was 5 years old, when they offered me a part that they made specifically for me as Clara's little sister in the Nutcracker, which was lovely. I performed with the ballet theater for 5 to 6 years before going on to pursue other dance styles, including waltz, tango, all the classical dance styles. I really, really enjoyed learning and studying dance. And then I really fell in love with acting when my father found a local theater and said, "Do you want to give it a try?" And I said, "Of course I do. I want to try everything." And so it was one play, and then it was another play, and then it was another play, and I learned more dance styles doing more theatrical productions.
And you actually create your own content ranging from short skits to special effect makeup. Tell me about that.
It more so began just as a little hobby, just to help build a portfolio of things that I like to do. And I like to see my progress from 14 to 24. And I like to hope that there was a big difference. For content creation, my little sister had made a dare that I wouldn't be able to hold on to a social media account longer than a week because I tend to just ignore my social medias back then. And it was probably the best dare she had ever given me because if she hadn't done that, I don't think I'd be where I am today at all.
Wow. Wow. And you actually were in during your junior year of high school with you're still a young whippersnapper in 2017. You actually wrote, dang, you were a junior and you were in the challenge. You took on the challenge of a 50,000 word novel in only 30 days. Wow. Tell me about that. And tell me an excerpt from your book. What is it about?
So it was a science fiction horror novel.
I like that.
And it's parts of it were loosely based off of my fantasizations of my own childhood. The story taking place in its prologue being in Russia and some of the not so secret science experiments that they may or may not have done to people. So I just took inspirations from the actual science fiction histories of that country as well as my own story and just kind of combined them into a fictitious storyline. So the reason I had written the novel was because in my writing course in my junior year, my instructor had given us two options. We could either write a poem for our final exam or take part in this writing challenge. I'm not the biggest fan of poetry. It's never been my strong suit. So I said, let me at least attempt it. He basically told us 20,000 words would have been perfect for our exam score. We didn't have to complete the challenge. And I completed it in 20 or so days with 64,000 words in the novel.
That is excellent. Very, very excellent. And what is NaNoWriMo?
That
And
was
that,
the
huh?
right.
After you, what did you say?
It was the name of just the writing challenge itself. Anyone can do it. You could do it if you wanted to every November.
Oh wow. Wow. I know that's right. And you actually discovered through well, how did you discover TikTok by chance?
My sister daring me. It wasn't TikTok then, it was Musically before. And I had made an account and she said, well, you should post something. And if you can keep it up for a week, basically you've proven me wrong. You know, as little sisters do. There was nothing really involved in the bet, more so I dare you to do it. And so it was with that same week, it had converted into TikTok. And I was just posting little acting skits from movies that I enjoyed from my childhood, little dance videos. And a large creator at the time liked my content and promoted it. And then I made something in regards to showing off my wheelchair for the first time. And the account just really started to grow. The next morning it was from 500 followers to 20,000. It was that big of a jump. And I had no idea what I was in for going down the line, going on 7 to 8 years later.
What was you actually in for? Like, what was you in for? What do you mean by that?
I gained my management here in Los Angeles. They discovered me through TikTok. I thought he was a scam at the time. He knows this story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He thought, I told him, I said, I genuinely thought you were one of the many people that tried claiming that they were from Hollywood and that they could get me jobs and whatnot. He had to get one of his clients who was and is very well respected in the TikTok community to message me privately and say he is legit.
Wow. And you were in Lionsgate and BuzzFeed character, actually. Tell me about that.
That was my second or third film audition with my management company. And the thing is that I didn't look at who was making the film. I had just gotten so used to getting voiceover roles, little commercials. I wasn't even looking at it, and I did it. It was during the pandemic, and so I didn't expect any films to be made during the time because it was a very scary time for the world. I got the call a week later, and it was that evening that he had called me and said, "Can you pack a bag and get into Canada tonight?" I said, "Nope." So it was the next morning I was able to get into Canada before they were closing the borders due to the pandemic. It was very quick. It was very fast. And I hear that that's not normal. So hopefully the next projects will be a little bit more lenient in that.
How did you feel doing the project?
It was my biggest film yet. I'd only ever done stage plays. I've only ever done small indie projects when I was a child. I'm talking 9 to 10 years old. So this was my first professional production. And when I found out that it was Lionsgate and BuzzFeed making the film, I had to do a double take and go back into my app where I did the audition to see if they even said that. And they did. I just didn't read it. My advice is to read your slate things before you audition, or else it's going to be in for a big shock. But I was very shocked that they liked me enough to put me in their film, and I'm very, very grateful. And they were so great with helping me with accommodations to the point where they were almost too accommodating to me.
That's deep. And tell me about your Orange Juice the Brand Clothing. I
That
saw you in Fitch, Fish. Sorry.
The first company that I got to really work with clothing wise was Orange Juice the Brand. They are on a hiatus nowadays, but they were a really big brand at the time. They were a great indie brand and they were wonderful to work with. I was one of their first disabled influencers, ambassadors, if you will. And in 2019, I was nominated to join with Abercrombie and Fitch's Face Your Fierce campaign. A friend of mine who was also in a wheelchair, he was one of their ambassadors for that project and had given them my name, and I got to be involved. Well, a small part. I was really, really happy. And I have a cute little memento from them that I put out for people to see, because not every day you get to be part of such a big company's campaign.
You have a lot going on for the future. Can you tell me a little bit about that? What you can talk about, by the way?
The past few weeks have been very, very busy. I had just recently moved, so I was still unpacking boxes when I had gotten a call from my management saying that I had work lined up already. And at the time, it was going to be a day and a half after I had just gotten my boxes into my home, which felt very on brand with my first big job. But luckily, schedules got moved, so I got to relax a little bit and get settled in. So I'm really looking forward to this project. It's near and dear to me because I have family members that are going to be very happy once I tell them about it. It's going to hit very close to home for all of us. And I'm just happy to be a part of it when realistically I wasn't in the running for this part to begin with. So it's great to see that the production team liked me enough to revamp a whole arc for me.
Do you have any like reason to want to do any more books? Like, are you that busy where you possibly cannot write books right now, or do you think you want to write some?
The thing is that I have 2 books currently. Every time I open up my laptop, they stare at me and they want me to finish them, but I get so sidetracked with I'm trying to now get into screenplay writing. It's a whole new beast to tackle, and I really enjoy the different medium that screenplay writing is versus novels. I'm learning how that works. I'm learning how the business side of Los Angeles works, which is something I never thought I'd have to look into. But now that I am doing it, it's very intriguing to me. So while I love writing novels, it's more so I haven't given up on it. It just needs to wait its turn now.
And Do you think that in the future that you are going to possibly write a movie about your life?
I'm someone who loves telling stories to where nonfiction I feel sometimes can be too constraining for me. So if I were to ever write something about my life, it would never be 100% accurate because I'd have to add in fantastical elements to it. So even pieces of myself that I put into my current screenplays, it's not 100% me, and I'm totally okay with that. It is more so, it helps give realism to every story that I tell because someone has lived it.
What kind of plays do you write? What kind of genres of plays and stories do you write?
I do love a good scary story, but I also love a good dark dramatic story. So those are the niches that I love to stick to. I love to see how far can I push limits that those who have come before me have already exceeded. And I love doing that because in the world of spooky and horror and psychological thriller, they are always open to seeing how far can we push audiences' viewpoints on certain topics that maybe they don't want to look at just yet. But I really enjoy that part of the psychological aspect of it all.
Give me an example of what you mean.
I would say Get Out is still one of my favorite psychological thrillers to this day for being a more modern thriller. I would say it really helped push how people view horror, and they could see it more so as something with so many different levels. My stepfather and I went and saw that in 2017, 2018, and we were talking about that film a year later, which is something with a lot of horror films you just don't do as often unless it's a really old film like The Exorcist. So I would love to.
Exorcist. So that, don't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry, but The Exorcist is something that I've watched that yes, I talk about to this day. If I had somebody to talk to about it, but yeah, The Exorcist is very powerful. Is that another one of your films you kind of sway towards?
It was one of the films that got me into doing special effects makeup just because being 1973 and being as good as it was and having people in the theater getting ill over it is something that made my heart go, I want to be a part of something like that someday.
Have you ever done a movie out of your film, your skits and your screenwriting?
I For my skits, I try to keep them as separate as I can because whenever I write my screenplays, I want them to be something that no one's really seen from me just yet.
Yeah,
I try to be more PG in my skits than I am in my writing. My writing doesn't really seem to have a filter.
and you said that pretty much you what you write, you trying to write something in your screenwriting that is beyond The Exorcist and beyond Get Out. So do you think that if it gets picked up by the right director, producer, and personnel in Hollywood, that they may make a movie about this?
I hope they do, and I hope with the way it was written and the vision that I have that I could still be close to it because it is they are my babies. I put so much, and I would say every writer, they put so much of themselves into their stories because we love what we do and we love the art of it. We just want to see it come to fruition in the best way that we humanly can.
I know this sound weird. I'm no writer, but have you ever thought about if the uh, director picks it up or the producer, whether you want to make it in like a 3D type thing in the movie theater? Have you ever thought about the future? Have anybody ever looked at your stuff yet? Because
Yes.
it just sounds like it's going to be soon that it be a film about it and you're going to be co-directing it.
I mean, fingers crossed, I do have eyes on some of my works. I'm I was raised to be I was raised in a lot of humility, especially in the creative arts world, because there will always be someone who is more creative and better than you. So I always take that in mind when I'm presenting something to someone who has way more power than I do. And I also do need to learn confidence to go alongside humbleness. And so when it comes to my scripts, it just makes me nervous. And for 3D, I was thinking about some of the stuff in my different stories. I don't think it would work because I think it would scar some people.
Yeah, yeah. I'm laughing because I get what you're saying. I know exactly what you're about to say. Scar some people mentally or something of that sort. So
Yeah.
I mean, hey, they want to see something gory and scary. I mean, every October we go pay our money to see the most scariest movie and we talk about it. So I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing one of your films at all.
Well, thank you. Just not in
You're
3D.
welcome. Thank you. And you know, how do you feel that your clothing ambassador line might go in the future with that?
I would love to get involved with not just indie brands, but I would love to see the more commercial brands as well. I would love to just sit down and see people's ideas and visions, especially shoes, because I'm really good at finding clothing that is adaptable for me without needing a special accommodation for it. Although I do know a lot of disabled people do need accommodations, and there are companies that are so good with helping people that do need them. For me, I would love to find shoe companies that can be adaptive for me. Because I was paralyzed so young, my feet are quite small because they never got to fully develop. So that is something I have always struggled with. And so if anyone's out there that has a shoe brand, I would love to chat and figure out if that's ever a possibility.
Um, do you think about talking to somebody? Have you ever thought about talking to somebody to develop a line of clothing for people that's wheelchair bound, paralyzed, or quadriplegic, or however? Have you ever thought about that?
I did, and I have a friend. She works with a company here in Los Angeles that does that. They're called Sewn Adaptive, and they make clothing down to custom from scratch. They put the fabric together for you for custom orders, as well as you can bring in your own clothing items and they will adapt it for you, which I think is a great thing. I've never heard of it growing up being paralyzed, and I totally recommend Sewn Adaptive. Their quality is really good, and I really enjoy them.
Is there any medications that quadriplegic or paraplegic people have to take in order to maintain with being that way? Because the reason why I ask is because I'm like, well, maybe you can develop. I'm just throwing it out there because you're in Hollywood, Los Angeles, so maybe a certain drink or certain foods that helps the quadriplegic or paraplegic that has to deal with that. Like they may still be that way, but it helps keep their bones strong and case in point, help them. Is there anything like a restaurant for that?
Um, to my knowledge, no. And the thing is that every person's condition is so different. I have a sister who's also paralyzed. We were paralyzed in similar fashions, but we are very different, even though we were paralyzed similarly. And so I've met so many people in wheelchairs and different variations of disabilities out here. All of us live such different lives. Medications that I take, some people have never heard of. Operations that I've had, people have never heard about here, and vice versa. There are operations and lifestyle needs that people out here have I've never even thought of before. I'm also not trained enough to understand nutrition for people. So if I were to partner with a company, I would have to ask my sisters who are nurses to see if it is legitimate, because the last thing I'd ever want to do is sponsor something or talk about something that could be more damaging to someone. That's the last thing I'd want to do.
Well said, well said. And what if you had to give a piece of advice to, before I get to that, it's two more questions. Why is it that you want to do all of these things? Do you want to just come out your shell, being paraplegic, to make people see that anybody can do anything if they put their mind to it? How do you see, like, why do you want to do it? Acting, everything that you ever done in a positive way. I'm asking you, not a negative.
I think it changed as I got older. When I was super little, I more so thought of it as, yes, I want to be able to prove something. And especially coming from a very small area back home, it wasn't even a town, it was a township. It was so tiny. And then as I got older, it was more so it just became, well, why not? It wasn't anything inspirational. It was just more so, I have the talents, I have the means to do it. So I'm just going to make like an able-bodied person and run for it. So why not? They can do it. Why can't I? And so I think the best way for people to go about it is to not try and look at it as a mountain they have to climb, but more so just a little speed bump they just have to roll over, taking their time and being careful and safe about it, just so you don't tip your chair. But I would say, don't make a mountain out of the molehill. If you know that you can do it, just do it.
Well said. And if you had to give a piece of advice to an entrepreneur that is disabled, what kind of advice would it be? Because you're a beautiful young lady, inspiring, doing a lot of things and making a lot of moves. You're multitasking. So, what kind of advice would you give that young entrepreneur that went through what you went through as well?
Have a very good counsel behind you. I was raised to believe that all advice is good advice, but not every piece of advice is applicable to you. Something that someone can think would be beneficial to their life may just not work for you. And so I think having good, sound minds behind you giving you this advice, and then having the maturity to sit down and understand which pieces can I take in, which pieces can I set aside, which pieces can I say thank you, but no thank you. And I think it is a learning process, and it takes a lot of patience and it takes a lot of wisdom from both outward sources as well as within yourself.
Thank you so much for joining my show. How can the people reach you?
I am Lolita Milena across all platforms. I try to keep it as simple as possible. No spaces, no anything. It's just Lolita Milena.
Thank you so much. I love it. Thank you so much, Lolita, for joining my show. Stay on the line. You guys take care, be safe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.